Today, I've got an absolute powerhouse in the world of mindset and mental coaching, Mindset Mike. With over 3,600 athletes coached, including UFC athletes and Olympians, this former FBI agent turned elite coach is here to share the mental edge that separates champions from the rest. If you want to learn how to break your opponents and build an unstoppable mindset, this is the video for you. And if you're enjoying this content, give me a follow, like, subscribe. Always love and appreciate people's feedback and everyone who supports this content. Now, Mindset Mike, let's get it. Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rapaport. Today, I'm honored to be joined by world-class mindset coach, Mindset Mike. With a background as a D1 wrestler and a former FBI agent, Mike has coached over 3,600 athletes, including UFC fighters and Olympic-level competitors. His unfair advantage system has helped athletes beat top-ranked opponents and win world championships, making him a sought-after mentor for elite performers across both sports and business. Thanks for joining me today, Mike. How are you and where are you joining from?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm in San Diego, but I'm actually moving to Phoenix here this next weekend.
Oh, crazy. Yeah, I was just actually out in San Diego for Bellator. And it's my fiance who we had met on the beach was like, I love San Diego. And we just moved to Vegas. I'm like, you're going to make me move again? Come on, let's do this. But appreciate you taking the time, man. So just kind of looking back into your history, your background as a D1 wrestler, how was that personal journey in combat sports, and particularly in wrestling, influenced your philosophy on mental toughness and performance?
Yeah, I would say it's everything. It's funny. I just shared a post from Neil deGrasse, or deGrasse, however you pronounce his name, the science guy. He was a former wrestler, and he was saying, he's like, if you ask any athlete ever what the hardest thing they've ever done, if they've wrestled, they're going to say wrestling. So any other, like, it doesn't matter what sport they played, if they wrestled as well, they'll always say wrestling. So it really was a good reminder for me. Like, I've been around it for 30 years now, 30 years competing, 20 years coaching, and then 10 years in this space. I started when I was 7. I'm 38 now. So, you know, it was something where you don't really, like, because you're in it all the time, you don't really realize truly how hard wrestling is. And then I was reminded when I started doing jiu-jitsu in my 30s and coaching jiu-jitsu and MMA guys in my 30s in wrestling, like, wow, like this is really not like anything else. So the short answer is I would definitely say it's influenced me a lot. I think the way that I think, my ability to manage my thoughts and feelings, my ability to get through difficult scenarios in life, all of that really came from, a big part of it was wrestling. And then wrestling at the Division I level, people don't realize less than 1% of all wrestlers will ever compete Division I. So it's a very elite group of people. I wrestled in college for about 3.5 years between injuries and, my senior year I had stopped to focus on school. But the moral of the story is that competing at that level made my transition into other parts of my career much easier, because like it was something that was so hard every day, and you would choose to do hard things every day, that later on in life, everything else feels easy. That's why the famous quote is, once you've wrestled, everything else is easy.
Man, I think back onto those times in high school quite fondly as some of the roughest and most uncomfortable moments of my life. But it's funny, you just came up. I'm so glad we got to connect, because you came up several times in like the course of a week. We had Gaston Bolanos and Des Whitaker on, and we were talking about discomfort and basically how some of the things that we see in life, once we experience that through martial arts and combat sports, they get a lot easier. And so one of the ways that I always like to look at this is, hey, how can we build ourselves up? And obviously the wrestling aspect, that's been such an important part of your journey. Talking about the FBI experience, I'm sure there's some pretty unique things that you bring to the table from that. Were there any mental skills that you got from that experience that you bring to coaching these top athletes, and how has that shaped your approach?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, my FBI Raids shirt is right over here. You just can't see it because it's cuts the screen off. It's something that I overlook a lot. Like everyone hears about it and they're fascinated. And for me, it was a chapter in my life that came and went. It was the dream that I always wanted to do. I did it by the time I was 22 years old, and I left by the time that I was 29 to pursue this career. So I would say like the biggest thing that I learned, the two biggest things was it really reframed how I looked at pressure, right? We look at pressure as like, oh my God, this guy might score on me. I might lose a round. I might lose this match. Like, if I lose this target, I could compromise national security, right? Like, that's a big difference between, like, when you look at pressure, like, that is pressure. But I didn't feel that same sort of pressure because I'm so excited to be in the FBI. So they gave me their perspective of, for athletes, like, we look at this sport that we choose to do, that we want to do, and we place all this pressure on ourselves. And when you compare it to real life pressure, it's really nothing. Like, you don't have to fight. You don't have to do jiu-jitsu. You don't have to do wrestling. You don't have to do any of those things. So it's a sport that we choose to play. So the relationship I had with my career, I was so excited that, like, yeah, I feel that pressure. Like, it's important to me, but I don't feel like this weight or anxiety that sports, something I chose to do, gave me. So I think when athletes can learn how to reframe that, that's very important. So that's something that the FBI taught me. The other one was I was a certified hostage negotiator. So it allowed me access to, if you know who Chris Voss is.
My favorite, my number one book. Yeah.
Yeah. So Never Split the Difference. He's the godfather of FBI negotiation. So to be behind me in part of those trophies was my 40-hour negotiator course. And that's what all law enforcement's required to negotiate those situations. And that was designed essentially by mainly Chris Voss. So tactical empathy is a big thing that they teach, which translates to active listening. And I feel like that enhanced my ability to communicate, which was already strong. That enhanced my ability to communicate through difficult scenarios much easier. The FBI in general, I was thrown into a lot of like high intensity scenarios, which made me later in life, when I had to deal with stuff, make it that much easier. So, youth and high school wrestling, Division I college wrestling. Then I started competing in jiu-jitsu in my 30s. Those things together really prepared me for the journey of entrepreneurship, which, there are few things harder than running your own successful business, maybe than running an unsuccessful business. But when you're trying to be successful in business, like, that is hard. And everything that I did before, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now at scale and help so many people if it wasn't for all of those experiences. All of them each shaped my ability to be the best in the world at what I do now.
The Chris Voss mention is just such a big one too. I've read the book recently, actually just about 3 months ago, read it for the third time because I've just gotten so much every time I read it. It's just a reminder again and again. But the tactical empathy side and working with world-class athletes, sometimes great to work with, other times not so easy to work with. And as someone who's helped numerous athletes beat their number one ranked opponents multiple times, what mindset shifts are most critical in terms of pulling off those upsets from your point of view?
I think there's a couple. Essentially, upsets happen circumstantially for a lot of people. I've learned what the circumstances are that are present in these upsets, so I can reverse engineer them. Some of the biggest ones is that, like, especially if it's a very lopsided bout, that person has everything to lose, like the favorite, and my person really has nothing to lose. And let's say it's a close rivalry, right? But still an upset. Even still, if you're not supposed to win, then if I can convince them that they have everything to prove, nothing to lose, right? Like, this is an opportunity. You don't have to beat somebody better than you. You get to compete against the best in the country, the best in the world. So, like, the upsets particularly, I've had over 20 people beat number one in the country or the world. So we're talking like the number one, right? So when someone is number one, they have the pressure. Now, I coach a lot of number ones. That's a whole different ballgame, right? So teaching them how to, instead of feel the weight of the crown, remind everybody why you own it, why you wear it. So I would say seeing this like big matchup as an opportunity, something that they get to do. Either I'm going to knock a good person off, or I get to test my skills. I get to knock a good person off, test my skills, or at a minimum, I'm going to find what I need to work on. Either way, like, I get this. Like, I earn this. I want this. The other part where most people fall is that they look at it as something they have to do. Like they have to beat somebody that's supposed to be better than them. They have to beat somebody that on paper they're not supposed to beat. Chemically speaking, that produces a completely different set of like reactions in your brain, and that causes a very big difference in performance. So when it comes to an upset, if I can convince them that this is an opportunity, that they have nothing to lose, this is exciting, right? All we got to do is make that other person listen to the voice in the back of their head. Like, I don't want to lose to a lower ranked opponent. Like, this person is good. Like, these were the things that I was worried about. So if I can get them to focus on that and combine it with, we're not trying to beat somebody better. We're trying to break another opponent. Like, it's not about beating somebody better. You probably can't beat everyone, but you could break anybody. So I've been able to rinse and repeat that process at literally the highest levels in sports, NCAA championships to UFC titles to Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. To probably my favorite is Amanda Levy beating Gabby Garcia. So I worked with Amanda when she beat Gabby, and that was the biggest upset in jiu-jitsu history. Since then, Gabby's lost numerous times, but prior to that, she only lost 4 times in 22 years. So for a 150-pound female to go be the 8 out of 8 seed and take on Gabby, who's the number 1 pound for pound, and not just beat her, but beat her ass, it's because we saw it as like, you don't have to beat the best girl in the world. You're getting flown to Austin on a paid vacation to do the sport that you love for a chance for $30,000, and you get to compete against the number 1 girl. Like, you have nothing to lose. You're not supposed to win anyway, right? So here's a game plan that, like, if you give 100% effort, it might work. I think the last thing they have to do is also surrender the outcome. And that's something that works on both sides. So if we don't care about winning or losing, I care about trying to break this person, have fun competing at the highest level. We can tend to have a very good performance. And on the flip side, the other person, right? Like, most people are connected to winning or losing. So as soon as this favorite starts feeling farther away from winning, they're starting to get closer and closer to losing. So they're going to overcompensate. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to overthink. That's going to make them more tired, more frustrated. And that makes it easy to break these opponents. So, like, I've explained some of the circumstances here, but I found that, like, upsets tend to have these things. I've learned how to create a curriculum that can teach people these skills, follow this process, and it happens a lot more often than probably it should.
Well, I think you're interview number 95 on the podcast, done over 100 live streams, and every time I talk with combat sports athletes, I would say maybe a quarter of them talk about finding a person who's helped them work on their mindset. Now I'm wondering how many times they were talking about you. But at the same time, it always makes me wonder these mental roadblocks that athletes run into and what they face when they're doing that. Can you just talk to me about some of the ways that you help them overcome those challenges when they're running into those mental roadblocks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is what I tell people. Everyone's got different symptoms, right? But the solution's always the same. So ultimately, like, up with the system that if you implement these things, particularly through this group course or like one-on-one, like short-term course that I work with, and these 8 weeks that I work with athletes, if you get this foundation, learn a set of skills that allows you to reverse engineer the best version of you. Like, that's the solution, is how do I get the best version of me out every single time? That's the solution to your confidence issue, to your relaxing under pressure issue, to your caring too much about winning or losing. That's the solution. There's skills that each one of those deal with. Nerves, right? We could work on nerves, but that's like going to the doctor being like, I have a cough and a sore throat, and they treat the cough and the sore throat, but not the infection that's causing both, right? So my system and solution solves all the problems, and then I sprinkle kind of skills dust on all of those things. We'll have a particular thing to work on turning nerves into excitement. We have a particular workshop where we work through transforming our identity from connecting to outcomes, winning or losing, what other people think, to like the values and standards that the best version of ourselves want to uphold. I would say, like, just going back to your question, the biggest roadblocks are their identities connected to winning or losing and the opinions of others. I think they have a poor understanding of what their fight or flight response is. They think that it's nervousness. You're actually not nervous. So I think understanding nerves, fight or flight, things like that, redefining that is helpful so we could turn it into excitement. I think a big roadblock is confidence. And I teach them that you do not need confidence to be successful. It's helpful, but it's a skill. Confidence is a skill. Focus is a skill. Emotional control is a skill. These are things that you can teach and you can build, but you don't need it to be successful. It just makes it much easier to do that at scale. Because that was my goal. Once I realized I started getting good at this many years ago. So when I was in the FBI, I was running a wrestling club. I had 13 kids in the state finals. 9 should have won, 5 kind of shit the bed. I have a psych background. I worked for the FBI. I wrestled Division I. I was giving the right advice, but I wasn't getting the results that I would have expected. They just didn't compete well that day. So I realized that there was something missing. So I linked up with a company at the time that was just starting up. They were mainly in the sport of wrestling, and hired them. I really understood their stuff. I started working for them. I started doing more, getting results. I ended up leaving my job at the FBI to do that. So when I started getting better at this, I realized that the gap between potential and performance was the lack of systems behind mental performance. You're going to default to the level of your systems. So if you can create a systematic approach that you can rinse and repeat, then it's really easy for me to scale my results. It was cool to win this one or that one. I want to have lots of people all the time performing to the best of their ability, because that gives them the capability to win these big matches. So that was really that was what led me here. And then going back to the roadblocks, right? I think a lot of people also, they don't have a process to manage the way they think or feel. So that means that their default is going to be how they feel. How you feel is going to be how you act. And if you're trying to fight your feelings, those emotions got hands, bro. Those thoughts got hands. And the more you try to fight it, the worse that it gets for you. So I think those are the biggest roadblocks: is confidence, nerves, identity tied to winning or losing, not having a system for mental performance as a whole, and not having a process to manage your thoughts and feelings. Those are the biggest roadblocks. And the solution comes from learning how to bring out the best version of you. That's a very broad topic without me getting into all the nitty gritty that I teach. But I can't just like fitness. You're like, oh, I want toned arms and I want a flatter stomach. It's okay. It's I can't just do crunches and bicep curls. You got to eat right. You got to run. You have to do certain types of training. You got to make sure you get proper, there's so much more that goes into it. But the solution is healthy lifestyle, right? So for mental performance, it's not fix this, fix this, fix this. It's teach this, then build skills in these other areas. And that's kind of what separates me from everybody else. Most other people give a lot of good cookie cutter advice. Having probably 10,000 client hours at least, I needed to come up with a system that if you follow these things, I can't guarantee that you win, but you're going to have more fun fighting harder, learning what the best version and the worst version of you looks like, and how to bring that out pretty much every time, so that we don't have to hope that we win, work hard and hope that we win. I know what it takes and the choices that I need to make and the things that I need to focus on and the skills that I need to accentuate. So there shouldn't be a guessing game. And that's what it is a lot of the time. It's I don't know, I'm going to work real hard and I hope that I win. That's I'm going to throw $5,000 at a stock and I hope that it hits.
Well, I hear you saying things like the confidence, the nerves. I know everyone deals with that, but like you mentioned too, you're not just working with the top UFC champions in the world. You're also working with younger athletes, cross sports, like lacrosse as well, not just 100% focused on combat sports. I know this goes to everyone, but what are some of the key differences you see between training those youth athletes and people like UFC champions in terms of the mental prep and the mindset?
Yeah, so I don't really work with anyone under college anymore. There's a handful of high schoolers that I work with. I mean, I built my name in high school wrestling. But what I teach now requires a very particular type of emotional intelligence, a certain lifestyle, minimal certain barriers. And there's a lot or a little of those things in high school. But I mean, so it's a very drastic difference. Let's take, instead of the ages, I think the people when they're younger, they need just very foundational understanding of a lot of these topics and some very simple skills. Adults need systems. Not that the kids don't need systems, but like I just don't really deal in that market anymore. But I would say less than the age. Let's talk about the difference in the sports, right? So, usually there's 2 national championship lacrosse trophies before me over here, right? I've never played lacrosse a day in my life, but in the last 4 years, I've had 2 teams win 3 championships in consecutive years. Not each of them, all 3, one back to back, and then the other one won the next year. Point is that like mindset is mindset across different sports. So going back to your original question, like what wrestling gave me, there is no other sport like wrestling. So understanding how to teach the mindset of a wrestler to non-wrestlers is a huge advantage. Everyone else is like baseball players and golfers that are like teaching breathing techniques and meditation and breath work, and all that stuff is cool. But a wrestler is going to fuck you up, right? Like we know the subtle art of fucking people up and the not so subtle art, right? So being able to teach that to a women's lacrosse team where they essentially double digit beat the team in the national finals that beat them by double digits the year before, hearing them talk about like run their face into the ground. Like it's not about the aggressiveness. It's I come in with a very specific process. It's not like you go out there and you be mean and you be aggressive and you break people. I have 4 steps to break people. It's push the pace and pressure to get them tired, make them frustrated so they start making mistakes. Yeah. So I have 4 steps to break people, right? So push the pace and pressure. 2, make them tired. 3, get them frustrated enough to make them make mistakes. Stay aggressive and relentless, and then make them never want to compete against you again, right? Those processes, if you can plug your game plan into those things, you can beat any opponent. And that is not something that you can learn in football. That is not something that you can learn in basketball. That is not something you learn in golf. But I can learn it in wrestling and then teach it and improvise it in these other sports. So I've had success across like not just different combat sports, but across different ball sports as well, where you can like, what would it take to push pace and apply pressure in a lacrosse game? What would it take to make your opponent tired? What could you do to get your opponent frustrated on offense, on defense? So that's really the big advantage of what wrestling gave me, is that like I made a career out of breaking people. That was my best strength, was that in my cardio. So being able to teach that concept, put it in a process, and then make it a skill that I could teach across sports, that's the coolest part. So the only difference between sports is combat sports, you have an intimate understanding of what it's like for the aggressiveness required to impose your will on your opponents. So that's the only thing. There's a little bit less of a learning curve, but usually like aggressive, like contact, not combat sports, they love this. They get uber excited. The girls probably get the most excited when we talk about the aggressive shit, right? But here's the thing. Your coach told you to be aggressive. Your coach told you to go break people. Your coach told you to go out there and be tough. What does that mean? Why do we need it? And then like, how can I break that down into actionable steps where I can actually go do those things? That's the difference between good advice and mindset training and the processes that I've created. That's the difference between me and all the other people teaching you skills.
Hey everyone, quick favor to ask. Did you know that nearly 80% of the people tuning in right now aren't subscribed yet? That subscribe button down below is what powers me every week to keep putting out these podcasts. Big shout out and thank you to everyone that's been supporting me for this. I couldn't do it without you. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe below. It means the world to me. And for everyone supporting me, thank you so much. Now back to the show. Well, one of the things I love about mindset training too is it's not just applicable to your everyday sport. Of course, a lot of the people in here that you're going to be working with are going to be doing that, but they're not going to be doing that forever. And one of the things I always like to talk about too is how athletes transition out of competition, and whether that's coaching, becoming entrepreneurs, starting to work for a company. In your experience, how important is it for athletes to develop those same mental skills for success in business as they do in sports?
I think it's everything. So, when it comes to the business side of things, like we talked about before, like athletes make the best entrepreneurs because we know what it's like for delayed gratification. And we got to suffer for what we want. We have a different level of perseverance. I think when I work with athletes, I tell them all the time, I was like, we're going to help you win more, but realistically, like, we're going to make a better version of you. And you're going to see just as much mental health and personal benefits, if not more, than you're going to see in your sport. I'm just using their sport as a vehicle to teach them the core pillars in my program, which I call building grit, which is weaponizing gratitude, resilience, intentionality, and total commitment, right? Like, I'm using your sport to deliver these skills instead of what like therapists would use, is they're going to teach you skills using your trauma, which is hard to move through. I'm using a sport that you like, that you want to win more, that you enjoy doing, to teach you these skills are going to ultimately help you in all these other areas of your life. So I get in my course all the time, you know, the mastermind that I run every 12 weeks, like, people are like, I'm sleeping better. Like, I'm so much happier. My husband's making comments like, what am I doing different? You know, I feel like I'm doing better at work. And it's the truth, because if you change the way you think, you'll change the way you feel, and you'll change the way you act. So if I can rewire the way that you think, then I can transform the way you typically control your feelings, and you can choose how you want to feel, which allows you to choose what you want to do. So I think it's super important, you know, whether it be the entrepreneurs that I work with, whether it be the high level athletes that I work with, they understand that, like, sport is just the vehicle. Your business is just the vehicle. Realistically, like, this is to help you in every other area of your life. So if all you learned how to do in MMA was how to punch and kick, then you missed the boat. That's not the point of the sport. It is a vehicle to do something you love that hopefully pays you well, that will teach you skills that, when done well, you can then set up the rest of your life. You know, top 10 guy in the world that I worked with for a long time, him and I were catching up the other day, and he's injured right now, so he's not fighting, but he used the money that he made to fighting to start a restaurant. He used the money that he made to fighting to start doing this, like, I don't know what loophole he found, but he's like taking over people's mortgages and like making all this money. You know, like, that's fighting should be a vehicle for you to create a better life. That should realistically be what it is. So for these fighters that transition into like the next phase of their life, take care of your money, get good agents, like, get good financial advice, and skills like mindset training will help you to focus on the right things, because when you focus on the right things, it's hard to do the wrong ones.
I always lean on this quote from Dana White that competing in the UFC, it's not a job, it's an opportunity, and it's what you do with that opportunity. And I think that's that way with life as well. As an entrepreneur myself too, that hits so hard, you know, doing this podcast, you know, hustling out there, finding different clients across the combat sports world. Never easy, right? But, you know, the stuff that I know, like, hey, if I keep doing this and keep doing it and keep doing it, it'll eventually pay off, man. So that hits very hard there. I know distilling everything that you just told me and everything that you teach into one thing probably isn't easy, but of everything you teach, what do you believe is that single most important mindset principle that anyone, whether in sports or business, should master to reach that top 1% of what they're doing in their field?
Your identity is not connected to this. Like, you're not defined by your sport. Your sport is something you do. It's not who you are. And when you realize that, then that transitions to the other really important thing, which is, I get to do this. I don't have to do this. And when you realize that, like, this is something you choose to, you want to, you pay money for it, you asked for it. When you can learn how to make that switch, and like, to anybody watching, like, you can't take my advice and go do it. Like, you need 21 days of processes like mine to rewire the neural pathways in your brain to undo the 35 years of you feeling like when things are hard that you have to do this. Okay. So I'm giving really good advice, but you're not going to listen to this and then change your life tomorrow. That's where the training comes in, right? Just like Alex Hermazi can say this life-changing quote to you, you're not going to make $1 million next month unless you hire a really good business coach. So I would say those are the two main things, like being able to separate your identity in your sport, number one, and two, being able to understand, like, have gratitude be your dominant attitude in your sport. It is something that you get to do, you choose to do, not something that you have to do. And that changes the way your head and your heart feels about it. That allows you to be more excited to compete than you care about winning or losing. Because when you feel like you have to win, then you don't want to make mistakes. You're not excited to compete because you don't want to fuck it up. And the same thing goes in like every aspect of business as well. So I think those are the big shifts that people have to make. And it's not easy. I've made it, it's not easy the way that I do it, but I've made it like just literally follow these steps. Do this for the first 21 days, no negotiations. And then for the next 6 weeks, you make sure that you're as diligent as possible. But I can change someone's entire life in 21 days if they follow all my instructions, because that's how long that it takes for your cellular memory to reset. 21 days to build a habit. If you can do all the things that I tell you for 21 days, you follow all my instructions, you negotiate with nothing, literally your neural pathways will rewire. And that is something where now you can think and feel and thus perform in a completely different light because your brain is firing on cylinders it never did before. I relate it to, let's say your neck and your arms messed up and you find a really good chiropractor, or your neck and your back's messed up. You find a really good chiropractor, a couple sessions a week for a couple weeks, in like 3 weeks, you're moving your body in ways you didn't even know you were capable. You don't even know how you competed before because you feel so much different now. Your mind is no different, and that's why it's called neuroplasticity, and that you can mold and remold the way that your neural pathways work. Because when it fires together, it wires together. So if you could fire together with the things that I'm telling you over 21 days, you will feel like a completely different person, and in 8 weeks, you should be almost an unrecognizable version of yourself.
Yeah, that's such a great point too. Just that it does take time, right? You don't just read a self-help book and you're helped. It's not that type of process. But this has been amazing, Mike. I appreciate you taking this time. Especially, I missed the move. Hopefully, we'll have you on again, and you'll have your trophy case all outfitted back out there again.
Besides my trophy case, dude, I bought a 4-bedroom. Not bought. I'm renting a 4-bedroom house. One of the bedrooms is dedicated to a podcast studio. So you're going to have an upgraded version of this, and then I'll have like 2 chairs for guests and stuff to come. So we'll have to do round 2 because I'm super excited to release that. But thank you so much for having me on. I love, one of the reasons that I left my previous company is because I wanted to scale my impact to more people. I was very limited with my ability to service more people. So I love hopping on people's podcasts, and it was awesome to see you have Gaston and Des on, like the impact that I've had on her through him, you know what I mean? And the impact that I have on him is just an example of, if I could reach a couple people on here, that I could reach a couple people from that they share this post, it just, that's like the biggest core value for me was impact. One of the reasons I left the FBI was I felt like I wasn't making the impact that I thought that my job would. And I get to make a massive impact on people's lives every day. So doing stuff like this is just a vehicle for me to do more. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And before we get going, where can everyone find your information? And I know that you have your mastery programs coming up. When's your next program enlisting, and how, if people want to enroll, can they be a part of that?
So you can best find me at on Instagram, mindset_Mike. You can look at my website, which is unfairadvantagemindset.com, and get more information about all of our programs. My signature course, I offer a few, but my signature course that everyone's trying to get a spot into is called Reverse Engineering Success. So I'm in week 3 of my last cohort for 2024. So mind you, spots were sold out very, very quickly for my last 3 courses. So if you're interested, you could send me a DM. You can go to the link in my bio, and you can apply for an interview so you can get on the first round of the wait list for my January 2025 course. Now, I might do something short and sweet, like around Christmas time. It won't be that course, but if you are interested, you are welcome to DM me. Make sure you give me a follow. I share some really good content, or check out the website. And if you're ready for coaching, sign up the link in my bio, and we can schedule a call in preparation for the next course. But I look forward to hopefully helping some of the people that watch this.
Well, thanks again, man. Great luck with the move, and looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks. You too. Take care.